on, today we're talking about the circle of Willis. The circle of Willis is basically the blood supply of the brain, and it's found on the inferior surface of the brain. It's formed by two major arterial systems. One is the internal carotid system and the other is vertebro-basilar system. Now, internal carotid artery, it's a branch of your common carotid artery. So if you can recall, this is the arch of aorta. It gives off brachiocephalic artery, which is the right on the right side, right? So this is the brachiocephalic artery, which is on the right side, and then it gives off right subclavian artery and right common carotid artery. So common carotid is in the middle. Then you have left common carotid artery and left subclavian. So SC, SC, that's how you can remember. And this is brachiocephalic on the right side, right? So arch of aorta. Now, common carotid artery, it gives off internal carotid and external carotid artery. But right now we are dealing with the internal carotid artery, both the right as well as the left. So internal carotid artery, very important in regards to the circle of Willis. And then you have the subclavian artery. Subclavian artery, its first part gives off a branch called vertebral artery. So very important, vertebral artery forms the second half or the posterior half of the circle of Willis. So this is internal carotid artery. So basically how it happens, this is your arch of aorta. It has common carotid artery. It gives off internal carotid artery and an external carotid artery. So arch of aorta gives off common carotid artery and then internal and external. So this is internal, right? And the brachiocephalic the subclavian artery, it gives off what? It gives off the vertebral artery. Now, vertebral artery, you can see there are two vertebral artery and they come together and to form basilar artery. Now, this happens in the pons. So, in the pons, both the vertebral artery come together to form the basilar artery and it gives off the pontine branches. If you can recall, when we're talking about the pons, so here you can see in the right here, this is your pons structure, and you can see this is the groove for, this is medulla oblongata and this is pons. So this is the groove for basilar artery right here. And where is the exact picture that I can show to you? So this is your midbrain, this is pons, this is medulla oblongata. So this is the groove for the basilar artery. I hope you can recall that. Groove for basilar artery right here. And where's exactly pons itself? Yes, here it's labeled as well, groove for basilar artery. So you can see. So this is that we're talking about. And also internal carotid artery, it comes here and gives off middle cerebral artery. Before that, let me tell you about the interior half. So interior half is formed by internal carotid artery, and when you talk about cerebral portions, so cerebral and cerebellar, let's just talk about cerebral and cerebellar first. So cerebral is interior cerebral artery, middle cerebral artery, and posterior cerebral artery. Easy. So interior, middle, and posterior cerebral artery. And then you have cerebellar. You have superior and inferior cerebellar. So you have superior cerebellar and interior inferior because it's interiorly positioned, and this is posteriorly positioned. So posterior inferior cerebellar artery. So it's a little dark as well because it's posteriorly positioned. So cerebellar, 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 superior and inferior, ICA and PICA, right? That's clear. So we know about cerebellars and cerebral. So that is very important for you to distinguish. But now when you talk about interiorly, so these are the part of the interior arteries. And the posterior ones are these, like posteriorly positioned. The posteriorly positioned are these, right? So interiorly, internal carotid artery gives a branch middle cerebral artery. It also gives a branch anterior cerebral artery. Anterior cerebral is connected by the anterior communicating artery. And internal carotid also gives a branch called posterior communicating artery, right? So this is the first half. The second half, there we have the posterior cerebral artery. So vertebral gives off anterior spinal artery, it also gives off posterior spinal artery. Vertebral also gives off posterior inferior cerebellar, right? Then you have your basilar. Basilar gives off the pontine branches. It gives off anterior inferior cerebellar. It gives off superior cerebellar. So this is superior cerebellar and this is posterior cerebral artery. So this is the circle of Willis, very basic, right? Now, when you look here, so let me just explain in regards to this. These are the vertebral arteries. This is the anterior spinal artery, and this is the pica, right? So this is from the vertebral arteries. So you have pica. Then this is basilar. These are pontine. And what is this? This is ica, right? And here the top one, that is posterior cerebral. The lower one or the inferior one, that's the superior cerebellar. So first comes the cortex. So posterior cerebral artery, then superior cerebellar artery. Easy. Then you have your, here there should be a posterior communicating like this, communicating with the, what do you call it? Here should be posterior communicating like this, right? Communicating with your internal artery, right? Like this, posterior communicating. So then you have your internal uh, carotid artery, and internal carotid artery gives off the middle meningeal branch. This is the middle meningeal branch going here. And if you can notice, it is going into the lateral sulcus, very important lateral sulcus. And it also gives you the anterior cerebral artery. So this is the anterior cerebral right here, and arrows are also pointed here. And the one in the middle is the communicating artery, anterior communicating. So I hope that's clear now. So what exactly? Vertebral, basilar, pontine. Then you have superior cerebellar, the inferior superior cerebellar. Then you have posterior cerebral, ICA and pica. Easy. Here you have internal carotid and middle cerebral and anterior cerebral and posterior communicating. Easy. Three branches here we studied. And if you can look here, these are the three branches, and these are the remaining four. One, two, three, four. Right? I hope that's clear. Now, when you talk about what is left, yeah, let's talk about the branches in detail. Right? So when you talk about internal carotid artery, now you can put everything into perspective. So internal carotid artery, it gives off ophthalmic branch, it gives off choroidal artery. So ophthalmic and choroidal. Other than that, posterior communicating, anterior cerebral and middle cerebral. So anterior cerebral, middle cerebral, and posterior communicating. Then choroidal and ophthalmic. Easy. Then you have vertebral. Vertebral gives off this is vertebral. So remember, it gives off pica. Yes, it gives off pica. It gives off anterior and posterior spinal also. So pica, anterior, posterior spinal, and then it gives off meningeal and medullary. So meningeal and medullary, easy. Here you can see this is the middle cerebral artery. It's going into the lateral sulcus. This is the middle cerebral artery. It's going into the lateral sulcus. Easy. And also you have your uh, basal artery. It gives off pontine and labyrinthine arteries. That's easy, pontine and labyrinthine. Then very important, it gives you superior cerebellar, anterior inferior cerebellar, and posterior cerebral. Superior cerebellar, posterior cerebral, and anterior inferior cerebellar. I hope that's clear. So this is the circle of Willis for you, and it's very simple and very easy.